Doom: The Dark Ages has officially been released, and players eager to see the prequel adventure to the Slayer can now jump in and play to their heart's content. Finally, am I right? Well, I've been playing the early access version myself. I'm currently about halfway through the campaign, and my opinion on this game is, well, I'll get into that once I also talk about these other stories like this boycott. And beyond that, there's quite a few other stories to go over when it comes to Dark Ages, from it being bashed by news articles, and later on, I also want to talk about how this game feels like how I wish more games did these days, a complete rejection of modern day nonsense. But first, in case you don't know, there is a boycott somewhat going on specifically with the physical version of Dark Ages, because id Software has confirmed that the game's actual physical disc is nothing and is simply used as an authenticator for the actual game. So in actuality, the physical version of Dark Ages has roughly, as seen here from Eurogamer, the physical disc of Dark Ages has only 85 megabytes of data on the disc itself. This has, of course, angered large swaths of Doom players because it meant that id and Microsoft both were clearly doing away with the expectations of what those players wanted. The actual game itself, mind you, is around 85 gigabytes of data in total, but effectively what this means is that the disc is more like a key, if you will, that you put inside your console to then unlock the digital version of the game to play on your preferred platform. The game also requires an always online connection in order to play it, which, if you ask me, is quite ridiculous considering that Dark Ages has zero multiplayer attached to it. Instead, the game is just a single player campaign comprising of 22 main missions. This whole "we need to add always online to everything," it is getting ridiculous, but it's not going over well, like I said in the beginning. Here's an article from PureXbox.com titled "Huge Number of People Canceling Doom Pre-Orders Over Botched Physical Release." You may be wondering, why would id Software and Microsoft do this? Well, it's for a few reasons. One is that if your game has an always online connection, it means that your copy of the game has to be constantly checked to ensure that it's legit to play before you actually play it. This means piracy on, say, PlayStation or Xbox can't really exist for this game. Because of the authenticator required, and of course, if you tried to play a pirated version somehow, Microsoft will then ping that, and then your copy or even your console will likely be bricked. The other major reason for why Microsoft, id Software, or really any studio does this now is because, let's just say it, companies just want to do away with physical games almost entirely anyway. Many brick and mortar stores are struggling because the majority of games are bought digitally already. As you can see here from GameIndustry.biz in their article, they say that in Europe alone in 2023, about 72.4 million copies of games were sold physically, which led to a 42% market share of revenue being made on physical games alone. That does sound great. However, in 2024, that number dropped off a cliff, with roughly 75% of all games revenue coming from digital-only games. So Europe's market share of physical revenue went from 42% in 2023 to 25% in just under one single year. Then if you go ask Google, they claim that the number is far worse than that overall in the world at large. Gaming in 2024 made roughly $184 billion, and about 95.39% of revenue came from digital sales, with only about $8.5 billion of that $184 billion I said before coming from actual physical game sales alone. So maybe physical sales aren't totally dead, sure, but if you compare it, it's obvious that the vast majority of players are instead buying and playing their games digitally over physically anyways these days. At this point, the only people who seem to be buying physical are people that either want to buy a premium or, collector's edition of a game. Otherwise, for most, there's really no point since digital is just far more convenient. Like, when was the last time you actually attended a midnight release at GameStop or something? For me, it was 10 years ago when Fallout 4 released. And since then, I've either had games mailed to me via Amazon or wherever else, or in the case of Doom: The Dark Ages, I just got the game digitally so that I can play it at my own convenience. But despite all of this, the physical boycott of the game is still apparent and needs to be addressed. Does It Play, which is a Twitter account that devotes their corner of the internet to how to play games, how big they are, and more, said this about Dark Ages: "The amount of people canceling their pre-orders or outright skipping Doom: The Dark Ages because of the botched physical release is huge. We always get these comments in our bubble, but this time it is disproportionate. One can only hope that the Gears of War people are watching closely." And as you can see, the user below said that they can't canceled their collector's edition because the actual disc that came with it would be nothing more than a glorified key to open the game digitally for them. And then another user would reply saying, I had the $99 physical version pre-ordered and canceled because there's no point. I'll just buy a digital version sometime when it goes on super sale if I end up still wanting to play it then. Another user would also reply with, easiest canceled pre-order of my life, their loss. Do I think this will affect Dark Ages sales a lot? Not likely in my opinion. Xbox wise, most players over there, they were never going to buy the game anyway since it is coming to Game Pass day one regardless. And it's why many games tend to cancel their Xbox versions for sale because generally speaking, the audience over there, I hate to say it, but they've been so conditioned to not buy their games outright that to release your game on Xbox unless you're some big mega potential hit is pretty much pointless since most players will just wait till it hits Game Pass either way. However, even though Microsoft owns Doom and id Software, you would think not being able to make a big profit on their platform would be a bad thing for them, and in actuality, it's the opposite. You see, when it comes to who the biggest publisher is right now on PlayStation specifically, the number one ruler right now is actually Microsoft, as seen here again from GameIndustry.biz. Microsoft, which owns Doom, is currently the biggest publisher on PlayStation. Their games like Forza Horizon 5, which just came out for example, have sold over 1 million units on PlayStation 5 in just under 2 weeks at sale, which let's be real, that's great for a game that isn't exactly new and probably didn't cost Microsoft that much to port over anyways. It's just free money basically for them, and we know that Gears of War Reloaded, which is a remaster or remake, depending on how you frame it, of the first Gears of War game, is also coming to PlayStation this August with full crossplay multiplayer, 4K textures, all the FPS you want, and all that content included. And I have no doubt that Gears Reloaded will be a big seller on PlayStation since it's a mega staple franchise for Microsoft releasing on the rival hardware finally. So whether these players boycott Doom or not, I frankly don't think that Microsoft is going to care either way. Because for them, while sure their game business matters to them, the actual profit that they make from it still pales in comparison to other parts of Microsoft as a whole. After all, they're a $1 trillion company for a reason, and now with Microsoft no longer really caring about console exclusivity, and instead just releasing their games as far as they possibly can, they're likely going to be the one publishing giant in video games going forward that just ends up making the most money, likely out of any of the other companies, because Doom's previous games already exist on PlayStation, Switch, and PC, and you can bet that Dark Ages will to some capacity arrive on Switch 2 eventually as well, and the game will still sell regardless whether the physical version is basically just a key in a console at this point. And like I said, Microsoft really doesn't care either way. They have so many other franchises and backlog games that they could still release and make off like bandits in the future with. I fully expect Gears of War 2, 3, the other ones as well. They're all gonna come to PlayStation eventually. Same goes with those Fable games because those will also sell like hotcakes. Not to mention, of course, the crown jewel in their hat, which is Halo as well. And when that Master Chief Collection comes to PlayStation, that's it, man. That will sell like hotcakes when that drops. And the day that I'm sitting there playing Halo on my PlayStation 5, that is going to be a pinch me moment for the ages. And Microsoft still has even more games that they haven't ported over yet still, so they'll definitely be doing that over time for sure. As for Doom, I think the game will sell, although like I said, the game isn't exactly without its problems. Despite that whole boycott, there's other issues too. This comes from the gamer. That's a blasphemy. Doom fans are upset that the Dark Ages has gotten rid of an iconic series staple. Players have taken issue that Dark Ages has decided to be nicer, if you will, with their difficulty settings. For one, you can now modify pretty much everything in Dark Ages. You could, in theory, play on the hardest mode, but then set the modifier so that you are pretty much unkillable, which, if I'm being honest, a mode where the absolute amount of demons exist fighting the Doomslayer, but then he's also practically invincible, basically is technically biblically accurate to his character. If we're being honest, that is what the Doomslayer is, but I digress. But the other issue, besides making Dark Ages arguably a far easier game compared to the much more difficult Eternal, is that id Software also changed the difficulty settings names. Before, the easiest mode was called I'm Too Young to Die, and now it's called Aspiring Slayer. While some fans, as seen here in this Reddit post, they think that id Software is pandering to the modern baby audience by doing things like this by stripping Doom of its identity. They compare this change as if Wolfenstein's, for example, were to change its difficulty setting too to appease babies. As seen here with how how Wolfenstein usually does their difficulty settings, the easiest mode, called Can I Play Daddy, shows BJ Blazkowicz with a bob on his head and a sucker in his mouth to signify that if you play on the easiest difficulty, that you're a big stupid baby and you deserve to get made fun of. I mean, look at the screen here. Machine Games literally refers to you as a spineless gamer if you choose the easiest setting. That's kind of awesome, actually. But I'm sure someone out there would cry and call this offensive somehow because they too are spineless and a baby themselves. And the further down the line you go, BJ's face just gets more goofy and evil, signifying how much of a good player you are. I mean, personally, removing the I'm too young to die name is kind of stupid, but it isn't game breaking or anything. But I'm of the mind that any change for the modern audience is never really a good one ever in practice, based on any game as any example. As one user on Reddit said, with Dark Ages making these sorts of changes, aspiring Slayer is kind of passive aggressive if you think about it. Might actually be less inclusive than Too Young to Die, since that's at least a little cheeky, but aspiring Slayer straight up says you're not good enough. I feel as though any of these changes are pointless, and for a fan base as old as Doom, it's probably better to not screw with what already works. But unfortunately, that too has been getting heat as well. This is from PC Gamer. Doom the Dark Ages feels like a console game first and PC game second. To sum up what PC Gamer says earlier on, they state that Doom 2016 and Eternal felt bad to play on a controller according to them. However, once they played those games on PC, they found the experience to be night and day, claiming those games were made with PC in mind in their opinion. I mean, they're called PC Gamer, so yeah, that probably checks out. However, when it comes to Dark Ages, it feels like the opposite according to them now. They say that the shooting feels less punishing and more mistakes are allowed, which I can confirm that is how Doom the Dark Ages feels to play. As someone who's played all three of these new age Doom games, if you will, Dark Ages is by and far the easiest and most forgiving of the three based on my own experiences. I found Dark Ages so far to be nowhere near as difficult as, say, Eternal, which I think is still easily the hardest of this trilogy by far. Maybe that's because of things like the Marauder existing, which has notoriously been an enemy type that many players hated due to how punishing it was to fight. But so far anyways, from what I've played, I haven't ran into a single enemy type that is anywhere near as punishing or deadly as the Marauder was. I actually can't think of a single enemy type thus far that has been anything but just fun to fight, but not exactly challenging either. PC Gamer did have more to say when it came to their problems, as it reads here. I can't unsee how profoundly horizontal the Dark Ages is. This iteration of the Slayer can sprint, but the dashes and double jumps of Eternal are gone, as are spaces that take advantage of that mobility. He's functionally a Call of Duty protagonist and not the kind with a cool jetpack. They continue then by saying, the arenas of the Dark Ages are wide, flat battlefields with fewer death pits and high grounds than the prior games. A dull change if you ask me, but one that makes a lot of sense for the console version. A Doom with less jumping is a Doom that asks you to take your thumb off the stick less often. I can confirm that the Doom Slayer definitely does feel heavier and sturdier to play than the previous two games. And yeah, the whole dashing thing is gone, but I'll get to that later, and Doom Slayer now also feels more like a mobile tank than anything else. But the thump of your controller when he lands, and the sound and the feedback as you sprint at enemies, it feels thunderous. And id Software made Doom Guy feel like he's this unstoppable force of nature pretty much all of the time. However, I will admit another thing that might piss off some, which is that, and this might sound bad somewhat to some, but I think that Dark Ages combat-wise might be my favorite of the trilogy so far. This mostly comes down to the fact that you have that shield to use now, which you didn't before. And the shield is easily my favorite weapon in this game and adds a ton of utility and surprising ideas to the game that work very well in my opinion. For starters, when it came to leveling up which guns and equipment first in this game, I basically just poured all of my resources into the shield over anything else. I made that thing into a fortress of a weapon that I could use quite literally almost all of the time. You can upgrade the shield to bounce between enemies like your Captain America running through hell, and it feels glorious and fluid. You will have enemies where you have to heat their shields up first with gunfire, then when it radiates bright red, you can then toss your shield and ignite their shields into portable C4 pretty much, blowing them up and their friends at the same time. It's not only that though, you can also toss the shield into bigger enemies, immobilizing them, which may seem like cheating to some, that you can basically hold a Revenant down by tossing your shield into them, but then this also gives you the time to use your guns like the super shotgun, which is obviously my favorite other weapon in the game, and then get super close and then blast these fools into meat chunks, then retract my shield by simply hitting L1 again, and then bouncing it around again to kill more dudes. But it gets even more beyond that too. The shield can obviously block bullets, and enemies can also shoot red and green projectiles. The red ones, yeah, you avoid those, but the green ones you can parry back at enemies, stunning them, and later on, once your shield is blessed and unlocks the whole rune system, you're then able to do even more effects with the shield too. I don't have all the runes yet, I've only unlocked the first one, but currently my shield can deflect shots and then send them back at their owners like a freight train that then hits them, then explodes, and then stuns everyone else around them. And not only that, but the shield also allows you to hold it up to block with L2. And then with R2, you can dash across the field at lightning fast speeds, and Captain America shield bash another enemy, usually killing them or pushing them back too. So the claims that dashing is not available, I mean, in a traditional sense, sure, but you can still dash into enemies and crush them whenever you want to. And when you combine the versatility of the shield, which in my opinion may be a controversial take, I don't know, but I think the way this shield operates in Dark Ages is easily my favorite weapon in this trilogy due to how versatile it is. It reminds me a lot actually of another game, which is Borderlands the pre-sequel, and my favorite Vault Hunter in that game, which was Athena. Athena also had a shield that the same way, it would synergize with how Borderlands played, and to me it was easily my favorite playstyle in the Borderlands games too. And that's kind of how I also feel about Dark Ages as well, because when you combine the game moving fast as hell as you dash around smacking into enemies, but then you can also use your fist or your flail to smash some demon's head in to give you armor, health, or ammo, then you can turn around, block some hits, deflect some green projectiles, sending them back, crushing your enemies. Then you dash into another enemy, pull out your shotgun or whatever else, and then give them free dental work to the face with bullets, and then you can then toss the shield at other shielded enemies to slice through them to give you armor while you're still shooting this other guy, and then you can retract that shield and bash another dude's head in instantly. And while this is all going on, each weapon that you obtain, which may seem small at first, ends up having an alternate gun mode that actually changes how that weapon operates completely. And each weapon has their own level route, and their alternate, weapon also has their own weapon route too. So for example, the combat shotgun, that's your bread and butter. You can transform it to shoot and burst, for example, but when you obtain the super shotgun, you equip that version by hitting square. So the combat and super shotgun use the same ammo obviously and exist in the same moment for you. It just depends on you switching the modes. But this also goes into the accelerator, for example, which is a plasma rifle, which you can shoot, which charges it up, and when you let go, it releases a blast of energy melting demons. But if you hit square, the accelerator turns into an energy minigun that can now charge enemies up with electricity, and once they're full, they become walking Tesla coils that arc and electrocute their other demon buddies around them. And the same goes with the shredder. At first, it's kind of an unremarkable gun. It's a machine gun that shoots spikes. But once you get the pincushion upgrade, the shredder now fills enemies up with yellow spikes. And once they start glowing, you can then toss the shield, blowing them up pretty much, and then spreading those spikes to other enemies. But then its alternate fire gives you the Impaler, which is a slower firing version of the shredder that shoots long, powerful bolts that again are slow, but they hit like a truck. And there's more too. There's one gun that shoots a kinetic energy ball on a chain. And then you have the grenade launcher, which can also turn into a rocket launcher on the fly too. And the rocket launcher can then be upgraded to have an ability called cannibalism, because originally the rocket launcher will obviously hurt you when you shoot it at close range. But when you activate cannibalism, you can now heal from being in the blast radius of your own rocket launcher shots. So you can see how that would work if you're now running around with an RPG in one hand and a badass shield in the other, just smashing into dudes and blasting them as you're 1 centimeter away from their faces. It just causes carnage, and to me it's glorious. So while sure, PC Gamer might have issues with Dark Ages more horizontal combat as they put it, or they will say that Doom Guy feels slower, I frankly found it to be the opposite. He's fast still, maybe not as quick as before, but the trade-off with the tactical edge of the shield, in my opinion, it just makes the combat feel far more enjoyable. Then of course, if you mix in the bigger open-ended zones, which I wouldn't call open world mind you, but they are still big, and then you're going to be able to use the shield for all sorts of puzzles. None of them are hard, mind you, but you can, for example, sever chains to drop big blocks that you can then push with your shield to then climb somewhere else. Or you can throw your shield at these green leaking spots in maps, then hit L1 again, and then it slingshots you towards where your shield is via a tether so that you can reach secret areas. I do wish you could dash in the air with L2 and R2 without having to be locked onto an enemy, but besides that one single complaint with the shield, in my opinion, that shield is so good to use and fun that I would love to see it return in Doom in like a future game. Maybe they will make it mandatory, it just becomes like its own weapon that you can wield, but the implementation here, in my opinion, is one of the best things about Dark Ages. Besides that, you got the dragon combat. Sure, yeah, it's simple. I mean, you mostly just shoot stuff with it, but the way that it flies and how it feels. Dude, it's like you're flying a fighter jet plane in a Battlefield game pretty much. And the first level where you play on the dragon, you're in this huge flying fortress area. And you can use the dragon to bomb enemies and take down warships, but then you can land the dragon on these zones, and then the game goes back to its typical level design map until you do what you need to do, which is ripping and tearing, obviously, and then you can hop back on your dragon and then go somewhere else. Also, you got these big Megazord battles. This is also pretty simple. I mean, it's basically a beat 'em up where you're just a big robot. But hey, look, I'm a simple man, alright? I like big robots and I love dragons, the same way I enjoy heavy metal music and the aesthetic of Doom overall. So these big robot fights, they just make me feel like a kid playing with my toys in my parents' basement when I was younger again. You're just beating these big ugly demons with your big robot fists, and it kind of just turns Doom into like a Pacific Rim game all of a sudden. Like you're a Jaeger pilot punching these skyscraper-sized demons and you can run around and destroy installations by simply walking into them because you're just so big. Is it revolutionary? No, but is it big dumb fun that puts a smile on my face as I punch big demons and getting to fly a dragon like an airplane as I zip between structures? Yeah, it's just cool as hell. I don't know, man. Games like Dark Ages, they just tickle my brain in a way that few other games can. The story so far, I won't spoil, but it's fairly standard stuff. Bad guy needs the thing, you need that thing, so everyone is fighting to get the thing so the other thing doesn't happen. And in between these cutscenes, there's not a whole lot of talking, thank God, and id Software smartly leaves you alone to just rip and tear for most of it. I guess if you could add anything to Dark Ages, it would be to allow me to have the map appear on my screen as I play, kind of like how Borderlands did it in the past, mostly because I'm collecting everything because I'm a completionist, and the amount of times I stop the game to open my map to check for collectibles is actually insane. So if I could just have the map be on my screen as I play in like a transparent format, that would be cool. And I mean, I wouldn't mind more customization in the future when it comes to the Doom guy. I'm not saying full-blown RPG elements or anything like that. Doom is not that kind of game, I understand, but just, you know, maybe allow me to equip more effects to my Slayer so unique builds could be made, a build more about melee or maybe gun wielding, maybe a vampirism build where you can punch stuff to heal, or a more champion build like in say Dragon Age to buff yourself and resist damage. Maybe Doom will never do anything like that, a man can dream though, but despite all these issues people seem to have from the physical copies being effectively pointless, I agree it does suck that games should be fully on a physical disc if you pay for them, and I think the practice of let's remove the game and just make it a key is anti-consumer, and I think people should be able to play your single player games offline if they have the disc, because that's what being a physical disc means, or at least it used to be. It's like DVDs, right? You shouldn't have to update or whatever. It's a DVD. You just put it in and the content is on the disc. But the obvious reason they do this is to combat piracy, but I think while companies are wrestling with pirates over how they can access the content, that a lot of innocent people who just want their games physically and to be respected are kind of getting caught in the crossfires here because of things they have no control over, and it sucks to see. Yeah, it's a complicated situation, but regardless, I don't think the boycott of physical copies will hurt Doom that much, or at least I don't think so. It's too early to say yet. As for the other issues like aspiring Slayer or a PC gamer claiming that the game is abandoning its PC roots, I just disagree with that. I think Doom, like always, just comes down to skill like any other game, and whether you're on PC or console with a controller, you're going to thrive in a game like this either way. And I think that Microsoft has a potential big hit on their hands. Do I think it'll win Game of the Year? Probably not, no. I don't think so, but maybe it could win Best Shooter unless something truly revolutionary releases this year. But I think what I love most about the modern Doom games is that out of any older franchise being revitalized and remade for video games today, that Doom is probably one of the best iterations of what companies should be doing when it comes to giving players what they want. Also, I want to confirm that so far at the halfway point of the campaign, there has been no agenda pushing whatsoever, talking down, or anything of any kind sidelining the Slayer in terms of importance. Sure, the female commander, Lady Thera, I think her name is very important to the plot, I won't say how, but she doesn't outshine the Slayer in any way. The game is very clearly all about the Doom Slayer getting vengeance, breaking his shackles, and crushing his enemies, and I would say the way they treat the Doom Slayer here especially, that he comes off more like a mythological hero than a man almost. Like the way his entrance is treated in the opening cutscene, they treat Doom Guy's arrival less like a soldier coming to a battlefield and more like the makers are releasing a walking nuke with a vengeance. And that's something that I love about these games. They feel completely devoid of the stupidity of modern games when it comes to their stories. And I applaud id Software for, thankfully so far anyway, who knows, maybe the game's story falls apart halfway and Doom Guy becomes trans in the second half, although I doubt it. But in a sea of franchises reimagining their male heroes like Kratos, Spider-Man, or say what happened to Joel in The Last of Us, it's refreshing and humbling to see id Software not embracing any of that nonsense whatsoever, because Doom Guy is not here addressing his toxic masculinity. He's not going to therapy sessions. He's a simple blank slate for the player to embody as they rip and tear demons into pieces, and honestly, I applaud that way of thinking. Dark Ages feels like a simple game from a simpler time, but it has all the bells and whistles you'd expect from modern AAA, if that makes sense. Maybe some people don't like this or that about the game, but I'm really enjoying my time with it myself. And frankly, I already can't wait for the next Doom game, and I'm not even done this one yet. I'm just having a blast, man. I put my headphones on, I lock in, I turn the volume up, and that's it. I'm just transported to hell, and I'm killing demons and resizing their holes with a shotgun blast to their guts. And I do wish that more games were like Doom, because it's nice to play something like this and not have to worry about the usual stuff, you know? Dark Ages just feels like the complete and utter rejection of what the industry wants AAA to look like to a degree in the future. Because it's unapologetically single player, there's no multiplayer, doesn't pander, it doesn't emasculate the main character, it's just a fun game that knows what it is and wants to give you what you want. And not every game needs to be a big live service slop simulator, and I hope that Dark Ages does well enough that id Software is able to continue delivering these stellar FPS experiences in the future. Because it would be a damn shame if it didn't do well, and then they'd be forced to make some always online slop game in the future instead. I just don't want my single player games to die. I don't want this style of game to just evaporate into the ether, and we don't need more slop. We need more games like Clair Obscur, The First Berserker Kazan, and Doom the Dark Ages. Actually, those three games I just listed are probably my favorite games of the year so far now that I think about it, but if you ask me, yeah, you should play Dark Ages. Yeah, I know, the physical boycott controversy, that's a shame, and I hope that doesn't completely derail people from supporting this game, because it's still objectively great and fun in my opinion, but I guess we'll see how that goes. But for now, that's what I got for you. What do you think of Dark Ages? Are you playing it? Are you on the fence still? Let me know. As always, thank you for being here. Subscribe if you wanna. I'll see you in the next video, guys. Take care of yourselves.